So you want some new ideas. The forced connection method is one way to brainstorm some new ideas, either by yourself or as a group. In this video, I'm going to run through step by step how to do the forced connection brainstorming method, and I'm going to put in an example as well. So feel free to follow along as I do it, and hopefully you can see at the end the odd connection that exists between train control and coffee, as that's the example I'm going to run through. But first, I'll give you an overview of the process of forced connection, and then we'll run through that example. So forced connection is quite simply to try to jog your brain into coming up with some new idea by relating different attributes of either of some sort of input idea or situation. So write down your idea or situation, come up with some attributes of that, list out how those attributes, even if they're completely unrelated, work together, and try to work out how they could work together. So what sort of things could they do? And that's how you can come up with new ideas using this forced connection method. So you're forcing connections between a situation or two or an idea or two and seeing what the result is. It's very abstract. I found it a very abstract way of thinking. It's not something that I'm used to myself, but I did find it useful in terms of coming up with something that we hadn't already thought of, something that we might have seen differently elsewhere. So my name's Chris. I'm an engineer. I've been working for a few years, picking up different tools and tricks and processes along the way, things that I've learned, and I share them with the subscribers on this channel to help make complex problems or difficult problem solving simple. I don't want to get into any jargon, textbooks, or anything like that. I want to make solving complex problems simple for everyone out there. So coming up with new ideas sounds pretty complicated, but hopefully you'll see from this forced connection method, it's quite easy. The first thing in the forced connection method is to describe your item or situation. Then, once you have your item or situation defined, to go through and list out the attributes across the top of a table. So draw up a table like this and list your attributes of the idea across the top. Then define some alternative attributes in the below. So come up with some things that sound or that are similar to those attributes listed across the top and list them down each one. So whatever attribute this is, list some alternatives down there. Whatever attribute this is, list some alternatives down there. The next step you can repeat a few times, but it's to pick one from each of those columns and then list out that one again. List those out and ask yourself, how do they join? So this is actually repeatable. You should be repeating this process over and over of picking one from each column, listing out that one, listing out all those ones you picked, and then asking yourself, how do these join together? So that's the basis of, or at least how I've used the forced connection model in the past. So as an example, I've taken a look at two of the most important things that have defined my career so far, coffee and train control systems. So train control systems are how trains decide which path to go down and how trains stop crashing. And coffee is a delicious hot beverage that gets me out of bed in the morning. These are the input attributes that I've put together, train control and coffee. I do feel like a coffee at the moment, though it's a bit late at night, so I don't think I'll be having one. So the process then is to list out some of the attributes of, say, train control first. So train control is always safe. It's very rare that you hear about trains crashing. A lot of work over the last 130 years has been put into making sure that trains don't crash. There are electrical systems and mechanical systems and human systems. And it's very safe. So the first attribute I've gone for train control system is safe. Now this is just a very short example. You can go into more depth, you can list more attributes here, but I thought we can keep it short just for the purpose of this video to show you how forced connection can get started. So safe is the attribute I picked. Then electricity. So I do have an electrical engineering background. So electricity is defined for me what it means to be what train control means. However, it's not limited to that. There are lots of human processes involved in train control, lots of mechanical processes, but the attribute we're picking to talk about here in our forced connection is electricity. Then mix it up with a bit of coffee. Now, force connection, you don't have to throw in two separate ideas like this. You can just go with the one. We could be listing out just for the train control. Sorry, I can't hide this on the screen. You could be listing out just for the train control part, the different, how do I do that? You could be listing out just here, these things to go through the process with. However, as a bit of fun, it is a benefit of forced connection that you can go through this with different ideas, different inputs, and so that's what we're going to go through here. So coffee, I've described, I've gone through the attribute of taste, and I've gone through the attribute of alertness. Now, what you want to call it, you can see here that I've kind of, is taste really an attribute or group of attributes? Is alertness really an attribute? But it depends on, the way I've interpreted the forced connection method is it depends on what sort of thing you want to get out. So if you want to get out some crazy ideas, then whatever attribute you put down, it's up to you. It really is why isn't that coming up? It really is the situation or item or something like that that you put inside. It's not so important whether you are strictly following some attributes or some definition of attribute. So that's the way I've done it in the past. So hopefully we can get something good out of this process in this video. Now, let's see. So I listed some of the alternatives under safe. So safe, I've said relaxing because let's face it, last time you sat on a train, did you worry about the train crashing? I certainly didn't. So safety, very relaxing. It's reliable as well. You expect every time you get on the train, you don't expect things to go wrong, particularly safety-wise. Now, sure, your train might break down. Some trains tend to break down more often than others, but you don't expect them to crash. You don't expect to get injured by sitting on the train. And one of the key features of safety is to have redundant systems. So I put redundant down as well. Now, under electricity, I've said computers because computers are what control the train. Control, it is train control. Then electricity, fuses start, and then cable as well. Just coming up with some ideas. So for coffee's taste, we have bitter, nutty, fruity, and I've said hot, which isn't really a taste, but I do like coffee, not as hot as the British, mind you, but I do like it hot. And then, awake, jump, and move. So coffee helps me jump up in the morning, right? Helps me get out of bed. Okay, so let's pick some of these and put them together. So let's pick redundant, cable, and nutty, and awake. So what could that mean? So we've got a redundant cable that's nutty and awake. We could say that, so having redundant cables, what sort of idea are we trying to solve? We're trying to improve train control by considering the attributes of coffee. That could be one way, or we could be trying to improve coffee with the attributes of train control. So it depends on what sort of thing you're trying to get out. Because train control is a much more complicated system, so we've highlighted here that it depends on what sort of what sort of ideas you're trying to get out of here. Because at this stage, we could look at improving train control, we could look at improving coffee. I'm going to take a crack at improving coffee. So we've said redundant, cable, nutty, and awake. Now let's think about what sort of redundant or cable could we do in coffee? Well, you might see that a typical espresso machine has 2 or 3 different outputs, so hopefully those work at a bit redundant. The cable is to make sure it's always on. Nutty, I've seen a good, now this is where it gets a bit hard, especially to do on video, because there's, I've seen nutty coffee. You can add hazelnut syrup to your coffee. I don't know how to do awake. But those are different options. We could do an electrified coffee machine. So so I've run just through those 4 things. We could have an electrified coffee machine. Sorry, you'll have to forgive my drawing, which is connected to the mains plug and then gives you a shock every time you try to use it. So it has a redundant cable connected to the outside of the machine, the metal part, so that when you touch that machine, you're jumped awake. Or, see, that's how we could join redundant cable of nutty and awake by something that's a bit crazy. No one would electrocute themselves with a coffee machine. Or you could alternatively have a nutty, You could build in the functionality into the coffee machine to dispense hazelnut syrup. I have a friend at work who really enjoys his hazelnut latte, iced hazelnut latte from coffee bean and tea leaves. So that's interesting. But so you could, electrocute yourself with a redundant cable to keep yourself awake. I guess it wouldn't really be redundant then, but whatever. A cable that keeps you awake through electrocution. So that could be one of the ideas to consider. Let's run through this again just to give you an idea. Well, let's pick reliable, control, bitter, and jump. So what's a reliable, control, bitter, and jump? Reliable, bitter, and jump. So the question here when you get stuck is to think about how the 4 attributes you picked work together. How do they work together? So coffee is reliably bitter. You could make sure that you're roasting the same every day. Coffee, the control in the machine, so an espresso machine has control to make it bitter, I guess. It could jump at you. Could the machine jump? Could the machine jump and scare people? So imagine you're in the office making coffee from the coffee machine, and you wanted that really nice strong bitter one. You're falling asleep and you're just there at the machine trying to make the coffee, and the machine jumps at you all of a sudden. Wouldn't that wake you up? Wouldn't that give you a shock? So it could be a surprise jumping coffee machine. Excellent. So there you go. So our first idea is a coffee machine that can electrocute you, and our second idea is a coffee machine that jumps up to scare you. So a couple of alternative ways of getting out to bed that we've explored here as part of the forced connection method. So to give you an overview, again, the forced connection method is about going from some sort of item or situation, listing out the attributes, listing out the alternatives to those attributes, picking randomly from that list of alternatives, and asking yourself how they join together in some way of creating a new idea. So hopefully the next time you're looking to brainstorm a new idea, you can do this as a group or by yourself. You just remember in this video how we went from coffee and train control to a coffee machine that electrocutes you, or one that jumps up and surprises you. If you're interested in more tools like this, that's what I share on this channel, the things that I've learned as an engineer over the years to help make complex problems simple. So if you're interested in simplifying complex problems and the tools to do so, please hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.